The first thing you need to understand about the Galactic Combat League is that it wasn't designed for entertainment. It was designed for humiliation. Picture this: a crystalline amphitheater the size of Manhattan, floating in the vacuum between 3 dying stars. 47 different alien species packed into bioluminescent viewing pods, their various appendages waving currency chips. They placed bets on which Earth warrior would last longest before getting pulverized. The current record was 4.7 seconds, set by Lieutenant Commander Rex Harrison. He'd lasted almost 5 full seconds against a Zentarian teenager who wasn't even trying. The aliens weren't just watching for blood sport. They were conducting a scientific study in failure. Humanity had been invited to join the League 6 months ago, right after we'd invented faster-than-light travel. We promptly crashed into 3 different space stations on our maiden voyage. The Galactic Council had decided we needed guidance, combat training, character building. What they'd actually created was the universe's most expensive comedy show. Jex Reeves knew this, because he mopped up after every single match. "Another one down," he muttered, wringing pink human blood out of his mop. The crowd's laughter echoed through the arena's acoustics like wind chimes made of broken dreams. That's gotta be some kind of record. Jex had been cleaning the Earth combat training facility for 3 years now, ever since his stand-up career had crashed and burned so spectacularly that even the comedy club's janitor had felt bad for him. Turns out, being perpetually anxious with zero sense of timing wasn't exactly a recipe for comedic success. But here's the thing about watching humanity's finest warriors get systematically dismantled by alien teenagers: it gave you perspective. And perspective, Jex had learned, was just another word for really depressing hindsight. The current challenger was Captain Torres, a woman who could bench press a small car. She was facing off against something that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a tax auditor. The alien, a helix from the spiral arm colonies, stood perfectly still. Its neural prediction matrix analyzed Torres's biorhythms, combat patterns, and probable next 17 moves. Prediction accuracy, 97.4%, announced the arena's AI. The voice sounded suspiciously like it was trying not to laugh. Combat conclusion, inevitable. Torres lasted 6 seconds. The helix hadn't even moved. The crowd erupted in what Jex had learned to recognize as Zentarian applause, a sound like someone strangling a synthesizer. Money changed hands, or tentacles, or whatever the hell crystalline beings use for appendages. "Hey mop boy." Jex looked up to see Director Walsh striding across the arena floor. Her expression was somewhere between frustrated and homicidal. Walsh ran the Earth combat program with the kind of efficiency usually reserved for military coups. "We've got a problem," she said, which was like saying water was wet. "The quantum lottery just selected our next challenger." "Let me guess," Jex said, squeezing a rain of sand out of his mop. "Another decorated military hero with a death wish and a complete inability to think outside the box. Worse." Walsh held up a holographic tablet. "It selected you." Jex blinked, then he laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, more like the sound a dying hyena might make. "That's hilarious," he said. "Seriously, who is it really?" Walsh's expression didn't change. "The quantum selection process is completely random and utterly binding according to galactic law. Congratulations, Reeves. You're Earth's next warrior." The mop slipped from Jex's hands and clattered to the crystalline floor. Around them, cleanup crews were already removing Torres's unconscious body. The alien crowd settled in for the next bout. They had no idea they were about to witness something unprecedented in the history of interstellar combat. They were about to see someone who had absolutely no business being there. "There has to be a mistake," Jex said, his voice climbing toward panic frequencies. "I'm a janitor. I clean things. I'm anxious. I have a prescription for anxiety." "Multiple prescriptions. Actually, breathe." Reeves Walsh grabbed his shoulders. "Look, the system selected you, which means you have exactly 15 minutes to get ready. The good news is, our research team thinks they've finally figured out why we keep losing." She pulled up a holographic display showing human neural patterns overlaid with alien prediction matrices. "Every warrior we've sent has the same problem. They're too good. Too predictable. These alien prediction engines can analyze fighting patterns, anticipate moves, calculate probability outcomes faster than human thought. They're playing chess while our people are playing checkers." "So how does that help me?" Jex asked. "I don't even play checkers. I'm terrible at games. I'm terrible at everything involving coordination or strategy or not panicking." Walsh's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Exactly. 20 minutes later, Jex found himself standing in the prep chamber. He wore combat armor that was definitely not designed for someone with his body type. The suit's AI kept making helpful suggestions, like perhaps consider basic combat training. Through the chamber's transparent walls, he could see the arena filling up again. Word had apparently gotten out that Earth was sending another challenger. The crowd was larger this time. The betting pools were more active too. Jex watched numbers flash across the arena's displays. Odds, predictions, estimated survival times. The longest projection was 3.2 seconds. Your opponent is Kale, the suit's AI informed him. The tone suggested it had already started writing his obituary. Zentarian champion, 4 arms, enhanced neural processing. Current win streak of 237 consecutive victories. He has never lost a match. Cool, Jex said, checking his pulse and discovering it had apparently decided to try out for a speed metal band. Any advice? Don't die immediately. The chamber doors opened with a sound like a tomb unsealing. The arena spread out before him. Thousands of alien spectators. Holographic displays showing his vitals to the entire galaxy. Standing in the center of it all, a 7-foot-tall Zentarian with 4 arms. Skin that looked like it had been carved from obsidian. Kale was beautiful in the way that apex predators were beautiful. Perfectly designed, utterly confident, and completely convinced of his superiority. His neural prediction matrix was already scanning Jex, analyzing his movement patterns. The analysis took longer than usual. Interesting, Kale said, his voice carrying easily across the arena. The prediction engines are having difficulty establishing baseline parameters for this human. Yeah, well, Jex called back, taking a step forward and immediately stumbling over his own feet. I have that effect on people. The crowd laughed. Not with him. Definitely at him. But Jex had spent 3 years listening to alien laughter. He'd learned to find a certain comfort in it. Combat initialization in 10 seconds, the arena AI announced. Jex closed his eyes and tried to remember his therapist's breathing exercises. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Except his brain immediately forgot the sequence and started counting in prime numbers instead. 5 seconds. He opened his eyes to find Kale studying him with something that might have been curiosity. You're afraid, the Zentarian observed. Terrified, Jex confirmed. Also confused, unprepared, and pretty sure I'm about to throw up in this helmet. 3 seconds. The prediction matrix was still running calculations. Algorithms working frantically to establish combat parameters for someone whose next move was apparently a complete mystery. Combat initiated. Kale moved like liquid lightning, for arms flowing in perfect coordination. He closed the distance between them while his prediction matrix calculated Jex's most likely responses. Dodge left, dodge right, attempt to block, freeze in terror. Jex did none of those things. Instead, he tripped. Not strategically, not as some clever combat maneuver. He simply caught his foot on absolutely nothing and went down in a tangle of limbs. Carl's perfectly calculated strike passed through empty air. Jex hit the ground in a way that would have been embarrassing if it hadn't been so completely genuine. The prediction matrix recalibrated frantically. Jex rolled to his feet, or rolled toward his feet, eventually achieved something resembling a standing position. Cole's follow-up attack arrived, just as Jex was busy having what his therapist would have called an anxiety response. His movements were erratic, unpredictable, driven by pure nervous energy. He dodged when he should have blocked, stumbled when he should have advanced, somehow managed to accidentally elbow Kale in what might have been a kidney. Apologies, Jex gasped. That was completely unintentional. For the first time in 237 matches, Kale looked genuinely confused. The crowd had gone quiet. This wasn't following any recognizable pattern. Earth warriors were supposed to be competent, predictable, and ultimately doomed. This human was none of those things. Prediction accuracy dropping to 73%, the arena announced. There was definitely confusion in its voice now. Kale pressed his attack, but something strange was happening. Every calculation, every perfectly planned move, kept encountering variables that shouldn't exist. Jex's combat style, if it could be called a style, was like trying to predict the path of a drunk butterfly in a hurricane. Stop moving randomly, Kale demanded, launching a four-armed combination that should have ended the fight. I'm not moving randomly, Jex protested, accidentally ducking under the strike while reaching for his inhaler. This is just how I move. I have anxiety and poor spatial awareness, and according to my last physical, possible inner ear issues. The prediction matrix crashed. Not figuratively, literally crashed. Sparks flew from Cole's neural interface as his prediction algorithms tried to process combat data that made no mathematical sense. How do you predict the movements of someone who doesn't know what they're going to do until they're already doing it? The arena erupted in chaos. Alien spectators were on their feet, or whatever they used for feet, shouting in languages that human vocal cords couldn't pronounce. The betting pools had exploded into confusion as bookmakers tried to calculate odds on an outcome that had never occurred before. Prediction accuracy, 0%, the arena AI announced. Now it sounded genuinely distressed. Combat parameters, undefined. Combatant classification. What even is this? Jex, meanwhile, was having the strangest realization of his life. For the first time since entering the arena, he wasn't thinking about winning or losing or not dying horribly. He was just moving, reacting, being completely, authentically himself in all his anxious, uncoordinated glory. And it was working. Kale, deprived of his prediction matrix, was fighting blind. Every instinct, every learned response, every piece of tactical knowledge was useless against an opponent who operated on pure chaos theory. This is impossible, Kale said, backing away for the first time in his career. You have no training, no strategy, no coherent combat philosophy. Jex agreed enthusiastically, accidentally performing what might have been a combat role. If combat roles were usually performed by people having panic attacks, isn't it great? I have no idea what I'm doing either. And that's when it hit him. The cosmic joke that the universe had been building toward for 3 years of human humiliation. All those perfectly trained warriors, all those strategic minds and tactical geniuses, they'd failed because they were exactly what alien prediction technology was designed to counter. But Jex was uncounterable because he was genuinely, completely, authentically human. In all the ways the computers couldn't understand. His anxiety wasn't a weakness. It was a feature. His poor timing wasn't a flaw. It was a random number generator that no algorithm could crack. He wasn't failing to be a good warrior. He was succeeding at being a perfect human disaster. The fight ended not with a dramatic final blow, but with Kale simply stopping. The Zentarian stood in the center of the arena, forearms hanging at his sides, staring at Jex with something approaching existential crises. I concede, Kale said quietly. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Jex had ever heard. Then the crowd exploded, not in laughter this time, but in something that sounded suspiciously like cheering. Alien voices rose in harmonies that human ears weren't designed to process, creating a symphony of appreciation for something they'd never seen before. Authentic, unfiltered, chaotic humanity. Director Walsh was in his earpiece, shouting something about paradigm shifts and new training protocols. But Jex wasn't really listening. He was looking up at the thousands of alien faces surrounding him. For the first time in his life, he felt like his weirdness was something to be celebrated. His anxiety, his poor coordination, his complete inability to function like a normal human being. It wasn't something to be fixed. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sentient beings, he said into the arena's communication system, his voice carrying to every corner of the crystalline amphitheater. Thank you for coming out tonight. You've been a wonderful audience. Try the veal, tip your waitstaff, and remember, sometimes the best way to win is to have absolutely no idea what you're doing. The laughter that followed was different from before. It wasn't mocking or dismissive. It was the sound of an entire galaxy discovering that maybe, just maybe, they'd been taking themselves a little too seriously. As Jex walked out of the arena, still wearing his ill-fitting combat armor, trailing sparks from Cole's broken prediction matrix, he realized something that would have made his old comedy coach proud. Sometimes the best punchline is the one nobody sees coming, especially when the punchline is you.